We are heading to ancient lands of Northumbria, one of the seven Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. It was what is now northern England and south-east Scotland. After taking a ferry from Ireland, we are travelling along the Solway Coast in Scotland to see Northumbrian high crosses of Ruthwell and Bewcastle, just at the border with England. At Bewcastle, there is a parish church dedicated to Saint Cuthbert, as are most churches in Northumbria, and the shaft of an early medieval monumental cross. The Bewcastle Cross, with its counterpart at Ruthwell, are both Northumbrian crosses and are located on the Solway Coast at the border with Scotland and in close vicinity to the Roman wall. Both crosses are around 57 kilometers from each other and have similar programs and figure types. Unlike the Ruthwell Cross, the cross at Bewcastle still stands unprotected under the open sky and so is exposed to elements. Consequently, its top has been destroyed and the surface of the stones is badly weathered, but on a bright day the sculpture is still most impressive. On three of its sides, the cross has only an ornamental decoration, but on the four there are four panels. In one is a runic worn inscription, each of the others contains a monumental figure. The three figures on the cross are crucial to its significance. In the center is Christ in majesty standing over two beasts at his feet, who are recognizing him as their God. At the top, St. John the Baptist with the lamp, and finally at the base, a famous and controversial figure of a man with a falcon or eagle on a perch beside him. Most possibly is St. John the Evangelist holding a pen. The two first figures are the same as on Ruthwell Cross, though different stylistically. Christ standing over the beasts is a subject from Psalm 91, verses 11-13, which are mostly interpreted in relation to the Gospel according to St. Mark, chapter 1, verse 13, when Jesus is in the desert together with wild animals and serving him angels, and verse 24, where demons are equated to the beasts who recognize him as the Son of God. The scene was usually depicted in Eastern Mediterranean art, where the beasts were a lion and a snake or a dragon. Here is a Northumbrian variant where the wild animals look rather like swine and their attitude also differs from a common Mediterranean example. Possibly Northumbrian artists used an imported ivory or metal relief as a model for their sculpture and adopted it to their own tradition. St. John the Evangelist is also at Ruthwell Cross, but smaller and together with the three other Gospel writers. At Bewcastle, he is singled out and represented on the same monumental scale as Christ and St. John the Baptist. Like at Ruthwell, St. John is shown with his symbol, the eagle.
But what is the connection between St. John the Evangelist and St. John the Baptist? Uh, uh, the Gospel, according to St. John, starts with the description of the Logos, and then St. John, the Evangelist, mention St. John. And St. John, in this case, St. John the Baptist, is a prophet of the Logos, prophet of the lamp, and prophet of the baptism. So he's like a precedor of Christ and of those times where Christ appears in history and in the Bible.
In turn, St. John the Evangelist has been considered by medieval church as the highest of the four Gospel writers.
This is a decoration. So once again, we've got some interlaces here as well, kind of floral elements, together with possibly some animal elements as well.
Style of the crosses in Bewcastle and Ruthwell looked into Rome and to the Mediterranean, but as much as the contemporaneous iconology of Hiberno Scotland, that of Northumbria was also influenced by Christian Syria and Egypt. International artistic links are very visible in an ornamental decoration of the crosses.
Here we've got all the motifs from different parts of the Christian world. So Eastern Mediterranean, continent, Southern Europe, and of course the very predominant Celtic element here. There are some birds, as you can see, some beautifully ornamented plants, possibly flowers.
Scholars suggest that floral and animal designs enclosed in medallions and braided patterns may derive from Coptic sources.
So we should remember that this was like a melting pot of many different elements coming to one decoration complex system, which is visible on high crosses of Northumbria. And you can see here those decorations which are typical of the Ruthwell Cross. So, but this one is the larger face of the cross, and such decorated elements were visible on the narrower faces of the Ruthwell Cross. This cross is possibly earlier than the cross in Ruthwell.
It may be because Bewcastle Cross is simpler and more precise than Ruthwell Cross. Both have been assigned to the second half of the 7th century, yet their age is still being discussed. They are likely to date from after 675, when Benedict Biscop and Culfrid brought masons from abroad to work in building their new monastery, the likely base from which the team came to carve Bewcastle Cross.
They were uh, so fascinated with the culture of the continent, so they brought books, artifacts, models for their creations on the British Isles. So they brought books, but they also created books here in Northumbria, in the so-called twin monastery. This monastery was also very important because in Jarrow there was a historian of the English history, Bede the Venerable. So he created a very important historical account of the Anglo-Saxons, so-called ecclesiastical history of the Anglo-Saxons, which was a little bit biased. Still, it gives us a great insight into those times, especially in the 8th century. Bede died in 731, so he actually spent all his lifetime in Jarrow, from 9 years old till his death in the 8th century. But still, he got a lot of information from around. So this twin monastery, Monkwearmouth and Jarrow, were very Romanized. So they accumulated models, great models, books, illuminated books, manuscripts created there at the scriptorium, which were modeled on the continental artifacts.
After leaving behind County Durham and legendary lands of Prince Bishops, we resume our journey northwards. Along the Northumbrian coastline, designated as an area of outstanding natural beauty, and finally we arrived to Norham, with another medieval church dedicated to Saint Cuthbert and the 12th century castle of Prince Bishops, whose power once reached even there, furthest to the north at the border with Scotland.